I think you have to start with the question of whether or not means testing actually encourages people to remain below. I mean, think about it. You say, boy, I'm going to give you some food stamps, and by the way, we have today the most effective food stamp president in American history. And that is not a positive thing. But think about it. You get some food stamps, you get some unemployment, you get a little bit of earned income tax credit, you get a little public housing. You know, all of a sudden you say to yourself, do I want to rise above the point where I'm going to be means tested? And you actually create a discouragement. This was the work that was done by Charlie Murray in a book called Losing Ground. It was one of the most important books on taking apart the original welfare system, because he said, we are teaching people to be dependent. We're teaching people to fail. We're teaching people to give up the American dream. So first you have to just check the concept of means testing. Second, I am very much for rethinking that nobody should get something for nothing unless they have a very severe disability of some kind. If people get something, I mean, again, if somebody has a temporary problem after a car wreck, that's one thing. If somebody has a problem that is a lifetime, that is a severe disability, that's another thing. But if you are an able-bodied person and you are getting something for nothing, then we are pretty stupid for giving it to you. Go back and read Abraham Lincoln's letter to his brother-in-law on why he wouldn't send him any more money. And you'll understand that there's a certain tough love that we need to readopt as a country. So, for example, I favor fundamentally changing unemployment compensation so that it has attached to it a training component, and you cannot get money for doing nothing, because if you had 99 weeks of a training component, you could get an associate degree in the length of time people have been sitting around waiting for Obama to create jobs. Lastly,
my question to Speaker Gingrich is that you spent a lot of years successfully in Congress. You have a very distinguished career. Then you left Congress, and that gave you an opportunity to start some other ventures and to think. And so you've been studying and thinking about that Washington bubble. What are the three biggest things that you have come to realize by being outside the bubble during this period of time?
Well, first of all, it's a interesting reversal of our two careers. You were in the private sector and then got drawn into public life by the pressure. I left the public sector, and close to that I opened up a number of small businesses. And the first thing I learned, which is the opposite of how Washington and most state governments think, is if you don't get up every morning trying to find a customer, please a customer, renew a relationship so you keep the customer, you don't get to stay in business. This is part of why I'm so intrigued with Strong America Now and the idea of applying Lean Six Sigma to the federal government, because it starts with the idea, if you haven't earned your pay today, why do you think we're going to pay you? I think the second thing is something I've known, which actually shaped my career in Congress, but now that I've been out for a while, it's even truer. And I was really struck with this the other day at Vermeer, which is a heavy manufacturing company that builds heavy equipment for construction. And it started with one person in 1948, now has about 2,000. And I was looking at their modern equipment. I mean, you go back and look at what they built in 1948, and you look at the stuff they do now. What hit me was the great reason for the American people to be optimistic is that in almost every part of the private sector, somebody is doing something brilliant that could be transferred to government, and that would lead to dramatic decline in cost and a remarkable increase in effectiveness. And the challenge is this wall, which the politicians, the consultants, and the news media create, which block you from having that conversation. And so I am very optimistic, because I spent the last few years, I helped found the Center for Health Transformation, because I really believed if you went around the country and found best practices, you'd be astonished how much you could change Medicaid and Medicare, but more important, and how much you could change private sector health care, and how much better our health would be, and how much cheaper it would be. The third thing actually is something I learned when we balanced the federal budget. I brought in a whole bunch of CEOs. Every Wednesday night we'd have 12 or 15. And I'd say to them, we're going to balance the federal budget. It's an act of will. We've decided we're going to do it. I said, what's your advice? Because back then it was only about a $200 or $300 billion deficit. And by the way, my record was when I entered office, the Congressional Budget Office projected for 10 years a $2,700 billion deficit total. When I left 4 years later, they projected a $2,300 billion surplus for the next 10 years. That's a swing of $5 trillion.
We're running out of
One last
time.
question.
We want to move on.
Well, here's what they said to me. Three quick things you'll identify with as a CEO. Set very big goals with tight deadlines. Delegate like crazy. Don't let any experts in the room.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Moving on to our next subject. Please give our candidates a round of applause.